Alright, it is that time again where I start a new project to fight depression, and I'm actually really excited about this one. And yeah, as you might have noticed from the title, it's something guitar related, so if you subscribe to this channel because of camera stuff, then I'm sorry about that. I do tend to start extremely random projects, so yeah. Yeah, I thought I'm going to buy myself a cheap guitar for once. I have quite a few that I really like, and just make it really, really nice. Just buy a cheap guitar, throw money at it, and see what I can come up with. And I bought the LTD Kirk Hammett signature thing, the KH202 or something, because it has little skulls on the fretboard. And yeah, call me cringe, I actually like them. But yeah, I think I paid like 500 euros for it, because it also was a B stock at Thomann. So someone already returned it, and I think I know why. The neck shape is nice, but the frets were not leveled by the factory, and you could not see any marks on them where they did some filing on anything. They were just pretty much brand new jumbo frets, with most of them being way too high, some being way too low, just completely random. Especially the first fret was way too low compared to the second two. This note didn't even exist, or barely. It was a rattly mess. So I thought, I'm not going to return it. I'm actually going to learn how to do fret leveling, and I got the tools, and many YouTube videos later, they came out perfectly. Took me 3 days, but yeah, now they are nicely polished, perfectly even frets. So yeah, I'm gonna change all the mechanics as well. New, definitely new one of those. This is the Floyd Rose Special. I hate them. I'll put in a nice Schaller Lockmeister 6 or something like that, which is pretty much the most expensive tremolo you can get. I could also just use a Floyd Rose or the Goto something, which are cheaper, but I thought, might as well. And also the body, the cheapest what you could possibly imagine. So tonewood, I guess. But yeah, it's nice and light, which is nice. I like light guitars. I have to glue quite a few things because this hole is way too big. The electronics were questionable, and you can already see I put some copper strips in here that I soldered together, which I just like to do before putting in this conductive paint, just to have a nice ground going everywhere, since conductive paint is it has a resistance the further away you go from the nearest ground point. So complete overkill, but I'm having fun. Anyway, the reason for this video is I went down the rabbit hole of which pickup will I use for this guitar. And I've been enjoying playing with pickups for a very long time. I have a few. I even have like a whole bunch of magnets that I bought off the internet. Oops. So that's an Alnico 4, Alnico 3, Alnico 2, just everything. And yeah, if you look on the internet about pickup reviews, it is pretty much impossible to find anything useful. You have videos of pickup comparisons with ones that you actually really notice a difference and others you don't. Then you have forum posts where everyone uses the most amazing adjectives to describe sound. But once I actually have the pickup in my guitar, it's nothing like that. So yeah. Then you have people like Glenn Fricker, who pretty well showed that pickups don't really matter once you get to high gain stuff, which does make sense. It doesn't really matter if your pickup has a little bit more high end than some other pickup if after the amp the signal has been converted to a perfect square wave that you shove into a poor speaker that's nearly dying. So there's nothing left of the pickup's characteristics once you do that. Especially if you use a boost pedal like Tube Screamer, which cuts off all the highs and lows anyway, boosts the mids, and pretty much makes every pickup sound like the pedal. So still, I do enjoy playing with pickups, especially if you play with medium gain, clean stuff even. Then, you can hear something, but it's horrible. I hate pickups so much by now because I just want to find one that I enjoy and just not think about it anymore. So I thought, okay, There's so much stuff on the internet, might as well add my own, do some measurements and actually see what I can measure. So yeah. I have a little setup here that I'm just gonna measure a few things, see what we can actually find a difference between pickups. Does it even matter? Probably not. Still could be interesting. So I have a little coil that I built, which goes to a frequency generator of my scope. So I can inject a little alternating, I guess, magnetic field into the pickup. If I just lay it between the coils, inject a magnetic field, and then just measure what comes out. So I can do just simple frequency plots and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a bit of a big coil. So anytime you put some metal into the magnetic field of a pickup, you will change the inductance and shift the resonant peak a little bit. But there's a reason I'm using a big coil, which will become clear later. Also have a little one. So for the frequency plots, it might be a little bit off, but comparing the pickups between each other, yeah, it's good enough for that. So yeah. Let me just show you how I did this. I'm gonna start with, let's see. Yeah, this is the Damasio Dominion bridge, which is one of my more favorite pickups. So Damasio says it's a medium output, so it's nice and dynamic, and adjectives. It has a ceramic magnet, so it has good speed to it, I guess. It's a very mid-rangey pickup. But yeah, so I can actually connect this to my scope. There we go. It's there. And if I bring my little coil close to it, you can see something comes out. I do need to change the scale. There you go. See? Very nice. So yeah, first thing I'm going to do is just do some frequency plots, which my scope allows me to do simply. I already set everything up. I just hold the coil there. I set like a 20 Hertz to 20 kilohertz sweep, and we get a nice border plot out of there. So let's run this, see what happens. All right, that's the result. The blue line right here, that is our gain. So we're pretty much comparing what we send into the coil to what comes out of the pickup. And to note there is I'm actually using the current going through the coil as a reference for the scope, not the voltage. So I'm measuring the amplitude of the magnetic field compared to the voltage coming out of the pickup. And as you might notice, this line goes up kind of skew. And if you ever looked at frequency plots of pickups on the internet, they're always a straight line, make a little bump and then go down. And this one is skew, and that's because we're using the strength or the amplitude of the magnetic field compared to voltage out of the pickup. And Faraday's law of induction says that you only get a voltage if there's a change of magnetic field, or change of magnetic field equals a voltage. And a sine wave, the higher you go in frequency, the steeper the slopes become. So yeah, which means if you go down in frequency, you pretty much lose about 6 dB per octave. So yeah, this line, you just have to imagine it being completely flat if you compensate for that, or you just tilt your head a little bit. So yeah, that's the reason. But yeah, you just out of physics, we lose 6 dB per octave going down the frequency spectrum. So let's see. So this pickup has a little bump right here. It goes kind of straight, makes a little bump up here, and then drops down again, pretty much, which is the resonant frequency of this specific pickup, which I'm measuring at 5.4 kilohertz, which is okay. If I use the tiny coil, I actually get 4.4, just because this big chunk of copper shifts the inductance of the pickup quite a bit. But yeah, what I can do now is I just can unplug this guy, plug in the Dominion neck, and do the same test again. All right, so in this pickup, our resonant frequency is all the way at 8 kilohertz, 7.5 something kilohertz, which makes sense for a neck pickup. They're nicely matched, so yeah, that works. Also nice to see how the phase jumps at the peak, which is typical for inductors. So yeah, it's pretty much a very normal behavior for inductors and some capacitance and a resonant peak and, you know, the usual stuff. But now I'm going to connect an active pickup, which I'm going to use the EMG 57, which is the one I actually chose to put into my guitar. So yeah, I just need to get some different electronics here. Okay, got all the electronics for the EMG, 9-volt battery, everything. Yeah, let's see how different that will look to a passive pickup. Okay, this is the border plot for an active pickup, the EMG 57, and it looks completely different than a passive pickup. So first thing we notice is no massive phase jump, but that doesn't really matter for us. But the frequency response is much flatter. There's no weird little peak just jumping out right in the middle. If you compensate for the 6 dB per octave thing, it's pretty much just a hump. There's pretty much every frequency in there, a nice roll-off at the bottom and a roll-off at the high end. But there's no peak, like a very distinctive peak, like in passive pickups. And I think that's the first big difference between passive and active pickups is the passive, they are pretty much a massive inductor. There's 2 coils in series, which is a lot of wire with capacitance in the cable. You will have some sort of resonance somewhere. And that's pretty much what all the pickup makers try to achieve. Put this resonance somewhere where it's fun, I guess. I don't know. While if you look at how active pickups are made, it's just 2 coils feeding into an operational amplifier or op-amp. They're not even connected to each other. They're just connected to some electronics that amplify the difference between 2 coils. And there's some extra stuff, some high-pass filtering, and yeah, it's pretty much just 2 coils that don't even see each other feeding an op-amp, which amplifies the difference. So you don't really have any resonance going on in here. Maybe a little, but yeah, it's just even across the whole frequency spectrum with a roll-off at the top and the bottom. So many people say that passives are more organic and use all sorts of adjectives. And I think one of the things that people notice a lot is this peak that just peaks out all the time, while an active pickup just sits everywhere and doesn't have a very distinctive thing to it. So people probably say actives are boring and cold and lifeless because they miss this very distinctive peak that passives just have. So maybe that's one of those things that make people hate actives. I don't know. Still interesting though. But using an active pickup and EQing in a little peak would be interesting. Again, for high gain, once you amplify the signal so much and clip off the top and bottom with distortion, this peak doesn't really matter. So yeah. All right, the next test that I would like to do is something I just thought of, and I haven't seen anyone on the internet do it, probably because it's stupid, but I'm going to try it anyway. Let's put this pickup back here. Is the transient, or measure the transient response of a pickup, because there's so many adjectives out there. People say this pickup is too harsh, or it's too squishy, it's punchy, fluid, it's full, I don't even know. I thought, okay, definitely the EQ has something to do with it, but there must be something more happening. So I do a lot of electronic design, and something that comes up a lot is transient response for signals, for power supplies, and I thought, I'm just going to measure that, because why not? So got my same setup here, back to the passive. I got the Dominion bridge again. As you can see, I can just put the little coil on top there. The yellow line is the input, green line is what comes out of the pickup. And I can actually change this to a square wave. There we go. Let's just go to 500 Hertz is fine. And this one is zoom in to see what actually comes out. And that signal's way too big. And yeah, look at that. Using a square wave just because I want to see what does the pickup do with the sudden change of magnetic field. Just out of nowhere, like if you hit the string really hard, that's pretty much what you would see. What comes out. And you can see it has some rise time, falls down, and look there, it overshoots. So there's some sort of, how you can say, something's happening. Is it the resonance? Maybe. It definitely overshoots on the way down, and pretty much that is a harmonic, or you could also call it distortion, depending how you look at it. What it is pretty much extra stuff that shouldn't be there. So technically it should follow the yellow line perfectly. It won't, because a pickup only really reacts to a change of magnetic field, which is only happening here, and this is just a DC offset pretty much. So yeah, so it definitely does some overshooting or ringing, whatever you might call it. And yeah, I guess we like that. That's also the reason why so many people enjoy vintage gear, because it's just imperfect. Vintage stuff just mixes in extra crap that we like. Distortion, some oscillations somewhere, something that actually technically shouldn't be there, but it is because it's old and shit. So yeah, we do like audio stuff that mixes in extra crap. Except if it's a transistor clipping, that type of distortion we don't like. And yeah, that's why everyone likes tape distortion. That's why we love tubes. They all just mix in something extra. And I guess that's the same thing happening here with the pickup. There's something happening that it just adds in. I think that's pretty much the best way to describe anything, any oscillation, any resonance is something that's added in and would be considered a harmonic or a distortion, depending on how you see it. But yeah, let's do the same thing with the Dominion neck. See if that looks any different. I can just plug this guy in. Yeah, same thing on this guy. But you can actually see that the oscillation is even worse. Or better, however you might want to see it. But yeah, one thing that's really interesting about passive pickups is because the signal coming out of that is so small that you need so much coils to compensate to get a meaningful signal out of it. And it's really sensitive to the load that's connected to the output. Here I'm using a 500K load, which is just this potentiometer connected in parallel with it. Nothing else. But as soon as you connect a cable, which has capacitance, something weird happens. Let's see, this is a 100 picofarad capacitor. If I just put this here. Oh no, look what's happening. The whole signal changes. Yeah. If you think 100 picofarad is a lot, I have a cable, which is a really nice cordial cable, 6 meters long, which already has 500 picofarad. I think this is a 500. Let's see what that guy does. Oh no. It completely destroys our transient response. Suddenly this really nice quick rise time gets squished down. Terrible. So yeah, that's what happens when you connect a long cable to a passive pickup. It just obliterates the nice quick transient response. So in the end, pretty much this is what you get at your amp. I mean, it's a signal, it oscillates a bit, it adds some extra stuff, which is nice. Yeah. Anyway, let's see how the active pickup actually does with this test. Okay, so I switched everything over to the active pickup, so back to the 9-volt battery. So yeah, if we look at the transient response, or the, actually should call it impulse response, or step response is actually the correct name, sorry. But yeah, you can see how quickly this pickup reacts. It just shoots up following the line, and then it tapers back down, which is pretty much the high-pass filtering inside the pickup. And just because of Faraday's law of inductance, if there's no change of magnetic field, there's no voltage. But yeah, that's kind of what it tapers down. But there's no oscillation, so it reacts really quickly, and that's it. It doesn't really do much more. If I move this around, you can kind of, what I notice if I move it over the one pole, you can see a little bit of a squiggly, because they used some steel slugs in there or something to, at least what their website says, to have a more organic sound, more Alnico feel. I don't know if that's that, but yeah, I guess there's something, I don't know. But yeah, very obvious, quick rise time, no oscillations, no overshoot, nothing. And if I connect the, let's see, the 500 picofarad capacitor into the output, see, nothing happens. So an active pickup does not care what cable you put onto it. So this is pretty much the signal that will reach your amp. And that's kind of why people who play heavy metal guitar love EMG pickups, because you just have this extreme attack. And yeah, that's actually measurable compared to the passive pickup with a long cable. The capacitance just absolutely destroys that quick rise time, while active pickups, they couldn't care less, because the output impedance is, I think, with EMGs, it's like 10 kilo ohms or something. But the coils fire into an op amp with no load whatsoever, and the op amp just sends the signal out. Yeah, low impedance output, that's exactly what you'll get. Yeah, I also have a Seymour Duncan Blackout from 2010 laying around. I'm pretty sure that'll be pretty much similar, but we'll check. This one's other way around. And immediately can see this guy has way more output. Let me just turn that down. Can't really, I mean, it's similar, just more output. Yeah, can just move it away a little bit to get the amplitude down. Same immediate rise time, and completely unaffected by capacitance of the cable. So yeah, that's the one thing about active pickups. You have immediate transient response. If you smack the pick into the strings, that's exactly what your amp will see. While with passive pickups, I guess. Yeah. So the last test that I actually really wanted to do is to see if there's any compression, because everyone says active pickups compress the signal, and oh my god, active pickups are terrible because they compress, they take away all the peaks, and passive pickups are just so much more dynamic. So okay, I guess maybe I can test that too. And I just have I have passive pickup back here. Now I have the bridge again, the Dominion bridge from Damasio. I could do the same test with the sine wave, and I noticed there's not much difference, but with the step, it's easier to see, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, got my step here, put the coil on, you can see a little bump. Very nice. So now I set up the generator for this knob to be the amplitude of the generator output. So if I turn it up, yellow line goes up and the green line follows it. That's pretty much one-to-one. What I send in comes back out. So magnetic field through the pickup is proportional to what comes out. If there was compression, it would follow the line nicely at the bottom, but then the green line would lag behind the yellow line as it goes up. But passive pickup, it's nice one-to-one. Very nice. I mean, I can switch over to sine wave if you want to. Let's see, there we go. Back to frequency generator. Oops. Frequency. There you can actually. I don't like frequency so much because it kind of changes with the amplitude changes with frequency, so it's a bit harder. But now I have them nicely aligned. I go back to amplitude, and you can see nicely how it perfectly follows input and output. Very linear, very nice. Now we can do the same thing with an active pickup and see how close they are. Okay, so we are back with the active pickup, and I put the scope back into the square wave. And yeah, here we can see the nice output, and I can change the amplitude of the input, and you can actually see how nicely the output follows the input. It's really nice. There's no compression. I mean, I can move the coil away a little bit just so that the tip of the output touches the yellow line, and because both of them are on the same scale, when I change them, they should always stay on top of each other. And if there was any compression, it would sag down the higher I go with the input. I can actually change this to, let's say, let's put this to 2 volts, and this guy also to 2 volts. Yeah, let's go really high. And there you can see, if I really put lots of input in, that's where the active picker will clip. And that is now at exactly 4 volts in one direction. So you have peak to peak 8 volts. And I highly doubt that you will ever get that much out of a passive pickup, even if you smack the strings as hard as you can. But yeah, there is a limit where it does clip, which is here. But yeah, I can also switch over to sine wave. Come on, there we go. I don't know, 1 kilohertz is fine. Change the scale a little bit just to align them nicely. And again, you can really nicely see, wrong button. Change back to amplitude, so you can really nicely see how input and output follows each other. Electrically, there is no compression, so that's something I found very interesting. But yeah. So there's a definite difference between active and passive pickups. Mainly the frequency response. Passives tend to have a very distinct like resonant peak that becomes very obvious when you play with medium gain, low gain and stuff like that. High gain, nobody notices anyway. I think it does make a difference when you play very softly. It's when this resonant peak touches the breaker point of the amp. It's a lot more obvious than if you have a very wide spectrum, go into the saturation of the tubes or whatever distortion you use. So I think maybe that's one reason why people say that actives are very compressed and lifeless. But I think the main reason why people say actives are lifeless is the transient response or the step response that we've seen. Passives definitely have a slower rise time and have some sort of oscillation going on, which makes sense since they have a resonant peak, and resonance means oscillation. Which also means more stuff is getting mixed into the output signal, which we find as nice. The pickup sounds fuller because there's just more information shoved into the amp. even if it's not there to begin with, but it's nice. Well, active pickups, they don't do that. But their strength is that they have a very, very quick response, and they don't really care about the cable. So I guess that's why heavy metal stuff does like EMG pickups, or generally any active pickups, because the rise time or the response of the pickup is just very, very quick. And depending on the style you play, you might like that, and some just might like pickups that are a bit slower or more forgiving, probably against high frequencies. It really depends. Yeah. To the compression part, you probably think, oh, this guy just disproved active pickups have compression. Well, the result of a test is only as good as the test itself. So there's one problem with the test that I did with compression. I actually only tested the electrical part of the pickup. There's a lot more going on in a pickup than just the electronics. So active pickups, or at least the EMG 57 and 66, they don't really have any compression going on from the coils and the electronics. There's some clipping at 4 volts, but you will never see that, guaranteed. But yeah, what about the magnet? The problem with my test is that I'm forcing a magnetic field into the pickup. While in normal operation, you have a magnet inside the pickup, that's an Alnico 4, I don't know, that provides a magnetic field, and the string moves through the magnetic field and disturbs it. And that gets picked up by the coils. While here, we shove an artificial magnetic field into the coils, where the magnet of the pickup doesn't really do anything, because we are providing the magnetic field, while in the guitar, the magnet is providing the magnetic field. And to prove that to you, I have a Seymour Duncan TB5, I don't even know. So yeah, here we can see same kind of response of an passive pickup with little overshoot, very nice. And now I can actually pull out the magnet. There you go. Nothing happens. Not even a little change. So yeah, we are not measuring the magnet. So yeah, the results of this test, take it with a grain or a whole bucket of salt. I don't know if magnets do make a difference. I do feel that there's a noticeable difference between ceramic and Alnico magnets, which does make sense, since one magnet is conductive while the other one is not, and one has a hysteresis, the other one does not. So I do feel that ceramic magnets do respond quicker and have a different frequency response, which technically would make sense, I guess. But yeah. So one thing I thought about why people would say active pickups have compression is that they generally use very weak magnets, and if you don't have a very strong magnet to begin with that the string can disturb, at some point you will get throttled by how much you can disturb a magnetic field to induce a current into a coil. So maybe that's why, or that's where compression from active pickups comes from, but I have no idea how to set up a test to test that. I would have to build something that vibrates something over the pickup in a very known amplitude that I can modulate and then measure the output. But I have no idea how to do that. If I have something that gets excited by the coil, or some coil, the pickup would rather pick up the coil rather than the vibrating thing. So I don't know. So yeah, I still don't really know if active pickups have compression. I guess lower magnetic field would lead to that, but then again, very old vintage pickups with Alnico 2 magnets have very weak magnetic fields as well, and people say they are super dynamic, so that doesn't really make sense. So anyway, I still don't know the answer to that one, but still I think there's quite some interesting information about the two types of pickups. Both do things that are interesting, that may be a good thing, while the other could be a bad thing, depending on how you play and personal preference, I guess. But if you convert the signal of the pickup into a perfect square wave in heavy metal, it doesn't matter. So still, I thought it's interesting. So yeah. So I do wonder at what point this becomes an obsession. They look the same, I don't know. So the top one is the active and the bottom the passive one. I put them exactly in the middle of the string so that it should be somewhat equal. But yeah, I mean, seems to be nothing way too bad. I actually find the top one to be a bit more peaky. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know if there's any difference. I would actually really love to try this with an EMG 81 or something. But well, I don't know. It looks so similar. Anyway, I am going to bed now. Fuck this. I guess it really comes down to just the EQ and quick transient response and lack of oscillations, or I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to bed. Screw this. So even though Glenn and so many others showed so nicely how little pickups start to matter once you get into high gain stuff, there is one guitar that absolutely will make a difference and push its way through, which is this. The ESP Edwards Alexi Laiho signature guitar, in pink obviously. It doesn't really have a normal pickup, so this is an EMG HZ or some variant of that. It's a passive pickup, but it goes into this little switchy thing, which is it's a preamp booster. And this one in particular is the ESP MMO2, I think it's called, MMO4, I forgot. But it is a old school MOSFET amplifier or preamplifier with what's really special about it. It has little dip switches where you can switch capacitors in parallel with the coils of the pickup. So you pretty much create a resonance circuit between the coils and the capacitors, and by switching in different ones you can actually choose the resonant frequency of this guitar, and it actually turned out to be absolutely violent. So you cannot do clean sounds with it. It really punches through. So no matter what amplifier you put after that thing, it just has its own sound. But yeah, let me show you exactly what I mean. Okay, I put the little coil under the strings, and yeah, let's just run the same test as all the other ones. See what happens. Okay, let's look at this thing. It has a peak at, let's see, 1.4 kilohertz. And it's not just a peak, it is an absolutely violent peak. Just look at that thing. Holy shit. It is massive. So yeah, let's look at the step response and see what's happening there. So yeah, same settings there, but something weird is happening. I actually have to go down with the frequency of the step to, I don't know, let's go down to 500 Hertz. Something like that. There we go, 500. Now you can actually zoom out. The scope is really slow at that capture speed, but even at that slow frequency, you can see that thing oscillates so much. I can go even down further. Let's go to, I don't know, 100 Hertz. We can actually capture how long this thing oscillates for. 1, 2, 3, nearly 1.5 seconds. That is insane. And if I switch off the boost circuit, it takes a while. There you go. So yeah, that thing has a really low peak, a very high peak, and it oscillates forever. Which makes sense since it's a passive pickup put in parallel with a bunch of capacitors that you can switch in, shoved into a little preamp booster. So that thing is made to oscillate and add all sorts of interesting stuff, which, yeah, that's the reason why you cannot get clean sounds out of this guitar. It is so violent, but it just sounds amazing on distortion. Yeah, I like this thing.